Well, welcome all. This is the St. Louis Parks Friends of the Arts open mic, poetry night. I'm Susan Budig. We have a lot of readers here. As you know, tomorrow is Veterans Day. I think they still call it Veterans Day. And I'm going to start. I'm going to read one of my poems, and then I'll start with our readers. This first one I had published this year or last year in Vietnam. It's a magazine. Pressed into service. He sits half-cocked by his mother's armoire as she bustles to iron his pants. His knobby knees betray his heart. They shake when he sits. So by heart he recites the rifleman's creed, leaning against the armoire, then snaps the shank as he pulls on his pressed pants. He kisses his mother with husky breath. He pants, "Thanks, Ma." On his chest, over crisp uniform, she traces a heart, then shudders as he exits, her back braced against the armoire. Now the armoire's dense with dust, where his creased pants hang, as today she holds his purple heart. Our first reader is Bill Meyer. Bill, welcome.
I think we should just all go home after hearing that one, to be honest with you. But since I said I would read, I will. Excuse me. This is called Things They Say. They say that silver hides within the seams of every cloud, and that a character of contrast lurks in every crowd. They say the final laughter is the best to laugh aloud, and that the very first to fall are those whose hearts are proud. Things they say. They talk about apples, like the good be spoiled by bad, and in comparison with oranges no fairness can be had. They say they fall close to the tree with consequences sad, and how one each day keeps docs at bay, and that should make us glad. Things they say. They say that each canine gets his moment in the sun, and that a man's work ends at dusk, woman's is never done. They say that dullness follows too much work, too little fun, but somehow there's potential harm when pleasure is free to run. Things they say. The web is crawling with wisdom sublime, and creeping with evil and stealing our time. Our fathers are filled with the wisdom of ages, and books are filled with the sayings of sages. But what matters much more at the end of the day are the things that we do, not the things that they say.
Thank you, Bill. Roslye Ultan, welcome.
So Much Sorrow, an elegy with lyrics from somewhere over the rainbow. A high-pitched whistle penetrated the landscape late one afternoon. No light threading the heavy clouds in a remote mining town at a train station. A gray train carrying lifeless bodies began its journey across the eastern Ukraine. Dumped onto the platform, piles of belongings: a computer, cell phone, a sandal, a black purse, a blue pacifier, a man's brown leather wallet, a child's pink suitcase. Human beings blown to pieces in the sky, scattered in a green field. 98 were children. So much sorrow. Too much suffering, such little time. The land they dreamed of once in a lullaby never will come true. The stench of corpses lingered in air, victims of Airlines Flight 17, intercepted by a surface-to-air missile. Twisted remains of unrecognizable faces flash across the news media into our undisturbed, Homeland Security protected places of manicured lawns. Their wishes upon a star where bluebirds sing, never to be heard. Artillery fire sweeps across the border into Holy Jerusalem. In its wake, 3 young boys lay dying on the pavement. Hamas rebels do not cease digging tunnels into Israeli territory, and Jews take arms in defense of their homeland. Diplomats write a truce blasted into fiery fragments. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue. The train labored out of the station to distant burial sites. Rebels and village miners watched and talked, guns at their sides facing the scarred wheat fields. Hours earlier, some dead bodies were removed. 2 fighter jets broke the somber moment. News anchors reported white clouds of smoke on the horizon. So much sorrow, not a child running in green fields. Why, oh why, never to hear the bluebirds sing over the rainbow? Why, oh why, can't troubles melt like lemon drops? Do I have time for one more? They're not very happy, but I guess the theme was peace. Maybe by listening to what war is like, peace will come. The groaning and the loss. But in the abyss of whispers and ringing rises one triumphant sound. Anna Akhmatova. Will it ever happen that wicked shadows cease around curved paths, where children play joyful games, claiming the bright earth that remains in these troubled climate twists, that warm the taiga in Siberia, devastate northern woodlands into dusty savannas, backwards millions of years ago? Is this a fate inescapable, a stern and stubborn, man-made, savage imposition, a bitter war upon too sweet a planet? I answer with anguish to this disease threatening land and sea and all Earth's creatures. Now, to wake all my darling children, look into their innocent eyes and lead them to flowing water, songbirds singing, roaring wildcats, leaping kangaroos, to know there is no shame in an angry cry, nor no better way to fill an empty page with soulful words, eager and tender, unleashing a reservoir of essential being. Thank you.
Thank you, Roslye. Our next reader will be Doug Willhide.
I've crossed the border from Minneapolis, so don't think me of an outsider. I'm also the poetry editor for the Southwest Journal, so if any of you feel like submitting some of your poetry to the Southwest Journal, my definition of Southwest Minneapolis is very, very broad. I'm always looking for good poems, and I care less about where they come from. So if you get the Southwest Journal or want to see your poems in print, keep an eye on the deadlines. The winter one just closed. I'm working on it now, so my head's kind of full of poetry. I thought I would read a couple poems tonight that are sort of recent, which means that they're unfinished, kind of. I think that writing poetry is a little bit like taking vacations. You get somewhere, you see a lot of things, and then you say, well, we'll come back and see that the next time. And, you know, as you get older and older, the next times get fewer and fewer, and the poems become, I'm going to revise that again, maybe. But here's how they stand now. First one, we've had such a nice autumn. It's hard not to write poems about it. This one's called A Walk in the Park in Autumn. Mother and daughter walk together, swinging their arms in perfect rhythm, exactly the same and unaware of their mimicry. The afternoon sunlight is blindingly bright, and the daughter, shorter, shields her eyes. The mother, taller, in shadow, doesn't need to. The daughter turns to a squeaky swing in the park. The mother thinks about dinner. And I think, an old guy now, irrelevant observer, how rare are these moments of peace and innocence. How my father and my brothers and me once walked side by side like this. Veterans of wars and other struggles real and imagined, big, bulky, German-boned beings lumbering down the street, we look like Pittsburgh's defensive line, and we never walked that way together again. On this fall day, neither the mother nor the daughter are aware of what they are doing, where they are going, how their small, moving picture seems only in the present, but holds both past and futures. They share an unrestrained freedom of movement, of time and light, of connection, as they turn the corner away from me. They will walk just this way, just this once. And another poem about autumn, I don't know, it's just on my mind. We were sitting by the rose garden having a picnic, watching the squirrels. It's called Autumn Picnic. The squirrels and I were out hunting buckeyes on a warm September day. They had claws and I didn't, but I'm from Ohio and they aren't, so we were about even. Except they could open the nuts with their claws and I couldn't, without help from a sharp fence edge. So it went, them scurrying purposefully around, me gathering leisurely what they missed, both of us after the gorgeous treasure, mahogany horse-colored chestnuts, shiny, moist, holding the warmth and memories of summer, enfolding the soul-building, heart-breaking beauty of fall. And all of us, with this in common, we hoard these treasures against harder days.
Our next reader is Michael Amram. Michael, did you want a chair up here?
That'll be fine.
This first poem is I was watching a video about in February of 1971 there was something called the Winter Soldier Investigation of the Vietnam veterans Vietnam veterans against the war. And they were, young kids. They really didn't know what they were doing. No one told them. And, these were the people who had done things like in Mile, and they were investigating the war crimes, and I remember this one guy in the video said they were very depressed and smiles were rare. And then he mentioned they had heard about a music festival in New York, and that brought a smile to their faces, that these people got along with peace and love for those 3 days in 1969. So this is called Respective Salutations. No one rose to anthems at Woodstock. No one held the heart safe as Hendrix burned the Star-Spangled Banner. They were naked, muddy, or just shiny lovers for a piece of time, and respect was forgiven those 3 days of 1969, and America wasn't blessed when it made division popular again. When integrity met compromise and Jimmy played so their anthem could be electrocuted for patriots who'd been betrayed by their country, by strange enemies. So Hendrix diminished chords for democracy that told black men to kill, yellow men for freedom's great irony. And no one rose to reflect on wind waves of flagellation when Hendrix burned a guitar's sound to ears as they waxed to dim the subliminal messages that sold Vietnam. A poem about a flag that resisted bombs burstings in air and didn't wave freely toward Canada. Their army grew free to 500,000 strong at Yasgur's farm. Not Fort McHenry or the Alamo. A black man's defense was an indomitable afro and subliminally peddled nonconformity to a liberty whose truths were never self-evident, but no one rose to anthems in 1969. This next one is kind of about all the procrastination that goes on in wars, how people, leaders wait while, it's going on, escalating. I guess I've been, immersed in, studying about Vietnam War, for my current book. So I'm familiar with, Nixon's intrusion in the peace talks, and so that's what this grew out of. It's called Deep Throat Sighs. All the president's men are dead. They left infractions and conspiracy theories in their wakes. They've gone to worlds where flowers grow, where wires won't tap and whistles don't blow. All their petty functionaries roam on earth, fearing the truth, the four-letter word that brought impeachment and burdens of proof for them. All the president's men, those lackeys and heads that nod yes when an Oval Office is circled again and situations arise that don't really surprise anyone. Back in the day, yes, back in the day, when they all agreed, like lemmings, they followed Sherman blazing a trail to the sea. And when Da Nang burned so patiently as boys waited for a deal to be made, presidents' men deliberated in peaceful charades. When checkers was wagged by a tail, no one said the games were bridged to canonize history. And young men looked down bongs for a light at the end, and napalm clouds incinerated their minds alive again. So they're here for the next war, the next deliverance of ambiguous clues of manipulations and manifestations of jaded chess moves and duplicitous hibernations and treasonous acts too brash for a nation, so they'll do it again, all the president's been. Thank you.
Diane reminds me that we are, well, she says, make a little banner to break the ice. And you'd think, I'm a Toastmaster, and I've been used to breaking the ice and making a little banner, but sometimes I get a little focused. Maybe that's that ADD in me. I just focus. We're reading poems. We're not doing anything else. We're reading poems. Oh, okay, relax and enjoy the evening. And I'm so glad that we've so many people here tonight. And we're almost out of chairs. There's a chair, well, right there between Bill and I. Our next reader is going to be Joseph William, and just a reminder to stick to, a couple poems, 3 to 5 minutes.
I'm going to pass and wait till you go around. The poems I have to read are not my poems. I'm more interested in hearing the people that actually write poems.
Okay.
So if you have time at the end, I'd be glad to read.
I wonder if you brought that one that you read at the Dine of Poetry. I thought that was such a marvelous poem. I wanted to email you and say, what was that poem? I want to read it. It's a good one. Wendy Brown-Baez. Come up and read, please.
I used to live just down the street. Now I live in Columbia Heights, so I just thought it'd be fun to just kind of come back for a visit. I'm going to read a poem that was written after Bush was elected, and I belonged to a writers group, and we were in such shock we didn't know what to do, so we took ourselves out to high tea and had sherry. This moment, and I also would like to say things have not really changed that much since then.
Is that microphone on?
It is not an amplifying microphone, it is for recording only, so the speakers need to speak in a loud, dramatic presentation mode.
Thank you.
All right. This moment after the election. At this moment, we are sitting before the fire, drinking tea, drinking sherry. A door bangs shut, voices speak softly. Twins, boys, her dress. He called her in, he said, the inner silence crackles to the fire, once to be unfolded, then given away like a lottery ticket. Here, you take the chance this time. Hold to the inner. Joy. A smile between roses and lilies, contemplative, serene. The dark mood as well pulls me into the primordial forest where I wander, a lost child, orphaned, my apron flung over my head. Then the miracle of finding the strewn stones, moonlight on the path, the way home, only to go back out past the witch's lair, no time to eat candies, gotta get the boy out of the cage. At this moment, people are being crushed under the wheels of history, our history, empire, the one we live in. We sit before the fire. I'm amazed. They don't know what they have chosen. My heart is heavy, heavy, heavy with the blood that keeps me alive while in Iraq, in Palestine, in Israel, in Uganda, in Afghanistan, in Colombia, in Oakland, in Juarez, it spills. I coat my lips with lipstick while others scream. I wear silk shirts while naked bodies writhe in hot sand. At this moment, which God do I believe in? Where does she exist on this fine, cooling evening? The fire that warms, the fire that burns, the freedom to speak these words. The freedom to be torn to pieces rather than give in to lies. The hope that brings me to my knees every time man tortures his own kind. The hope that rises from the ashes every time I dream of peace. At this moment, tears are no longer adequate, and yet they must be shed. So you had mentioned Jerusalem, and this is a poem at the Western Wall. So there's a tradition at the Western Wall in Jerusalem where you write a prayer and fold it up and put it in the crack, and then supposedly it gets to God's ears faster that way. At the Western Wall. I saw her at the wall, flattened against the stones by prayer, and I thought, where is her God, now that our tears have turned to blood? She brushed the wind out of her hair and wiped her eyes on the tiny slip of paper, folded and refolded, as if to protect the fragile message inside, as if the crushing weight of war had not already torn it into shreds. Can God read invisible ink? I thought of how our hearts were like that paper, folded within themselves, destined for the least crack in the stone.
Thank you, Wendy. And we have a few more readers, and we've got plenty of time, so feel free to read your 2 poems. Deborah Becker is our next reader. Deborah?
Okay. Well, bear with me. I'm brand new at this kind of thing, just getting into this. I wrote a poem. It's called Sunny Day. It's basically through kind of like the Minnesota winters. It's kind of how I might as well say to explain this poem into being freedom of, the freedom of terms of flying and, So, I'll speak a little louder. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. Sunny day. It's a beautiful sunny day. The sun is shining. Birds are chirping. Where we say, well, it's not here today. I'm not a bird or a fly. I'm nothing of the sort that can fly so high. In the sky and feel so free and have no worries whatsoever. But not here where we survive in the blister weather. So if I miss the sun that I rise, it may force me to compromise, to toughen up and inhale the frigid air with lungs that sting for birds that sing. In sun-drenched, trees glistering with branch snow and the dream of suns to share.
There's a couple more readers, and I know Diane wants to read, and I've got another poem to read. And we do have refreshments and water. If you're going to read and you've got a dry throat, you can go grab some water before that. And now a fellow Toastmaster is going to read, Cathi Droz.
Do I dare correct my friend Susan? It's Droz. You knew it as soon as you said it. I received the invitation on Facebook and I just saw it yesterday. I've written poems for a long time, but I didn't get any chosen. Most of them are for the Christmas season, and that didn't seem apropos. I decided when I was working too late today to still come. So I drummed up the only poem I know by memory. I thought of another one that was Thanksgiving, and all that I could remember of that was the last line, which was 3 days to prepare and 1/2 hour to eat it. But I couldn't remember anything else. This poem has been in my mind since I was in writing class my senior year in high school, just a few years ago. It's called Pastoral Lyric. I did bring it from memory, but I scratched it down in case I go off the paper, or onto the paper, I should say. So, Pastoral Lyric. And when the world upon your shoulders lies, and burdens come, where satisfaction starts, take up your feet and soothe your searching eyes. Mix dreamy, airy thoughts, much like the parts of crumbled roses, melting to connect lost hearts. No other annoyance, nor people's begging please, will turn you from your destined arts, or cause you pain. But as virtue slowly nods, she'll assure you're in that silence, far from heartless gods.
There's a lovely cadence when people have memorized poetry, and it'd be fun to have an open mic of poems you've memorized, and then I would stand up here and think, well, I think mice are rather nice. Their faces long, their tails are spot, and I can't remember it now. I'm on the spot. That's about the only one I've memorized, I think, aside from nursery rhymes that you tell your kids. And we have another reader, Evan Sachs.
Well, now don't clap until you heard it. People tend to write poetry about things about which they feel a great deal of passion. And for those of you who have never touched upon the world of duplicate competitive bridge, that's a passion. And when I first retired, I was asked to teach a class at a high school up at St. Anthony Village. One of the most beautifully rewarding episodes of my life. So this is called A Paean of Love, and it's dedicated to the American Contract Bridge League. This bridge, in all its complex ways, the sands of time does mock. Competitors of every age ignore the ticking clock. It's here we shed our adult years for pseudo-mortal strife. Bang, bang, you're dead. Then off we go, restored once more to life. To teach young minds so keen to start, so master points be earned. With subdued tones they say to me, it's too much to be learned. And there's the nugget they've unearthed, 'twas waiting to be found. Their youthful eyes had spotted it just lying on the ground. If we did nothing but play bridge until our heavenly call, it still would be impossible for us to learn it all. This game has given so much to us, we must reciprocate. Expose young minds to bridge's lore before it is too late. We'll pass the siren song of bridge to youth's receptive heart, and know then in the scheme of things that we have done our part. So point by point I inch along to scale that lofty ridge, once more to view, with all of you, the majesty of bridge. which incidentally is the ultimate exercise in deductive reasoning. The dean of students came in and said, "Can I monitor the class?" I said, "Sure." And after 15 minutes, he called me aside and said, "You're teaching deductive reasoning." I said, "What do you think it was? 4 little old ladies in the kitchen talking about their hairdresser?" He said, "Oh, no." Anyway, touch upon it, you'll love it.
Thank you, Evan. I have not mastered bridge. I haven't even attempted, but I can play euchre. Our next reader is Jane McClain.
These are 2 poems that go together, written about a month apart. Waiting for Spring. My father died on April 12th. At the cemetery, the grass was green, the air was warm. My mother-in-law also died in April. The day of her funeral was beautiful. We stood and talked with cousins for the longest time. No one wanted to leave. On April 13th, I got the call, the first call. Mom hadn't eaten in 2 days. They couldn't say if it would be hours or days. We visited that afternoon and watched her sleep again. Every day except today, I visited and watched her sleep. Today, April 18th, it snowed. Not a light dusting, but thick, heavy snow. The kind where it took an hour to drive home from work instead of 15 minutes. I'm waiting for spring. I wonder if Mom is too. Spring arrives. May 9th. I sit at the computer and view the slide presentation my sister created for Mom's memorial service again. The last slide brings me to often tears. Her picture and the words, Grace Carlock, rest in peace, April 3rd, 1925 to April 25th, 2013. Through February, we watched her agitation. Through March and April, we watched her restful sleep. Now we do not see her, but I see tulips rising, green and new. I see the maple tree presenting gifts of yellow-green flowers. Spring has arrived.
Diane, would you like to come up and read? Diane, and I meant to say, how do you pronounce your last name? Pecoraro? Pecoraro.
So first of all, thank you all for coming, for reading, for participating. We have a wonderful, large roster of something like 13 poets tonight, which I think for all of us is a record. And I'm actually the representative tonight for Friends of the Arts, which is the organization, the umbrella organization in St. Louis Park for coordinating arts and activities and sponsoring scholarships for people who want to. We have small grants and scholarships for people who want to do some pursuit of their writing or of other forms of art. So check out the website. We have information over there. Those of you who came a little early got it, but if you came a little bit later, maybe you'll want to pick up some of that information over there. So I thought, in honor of all of us who read tonight, this is not a poem, but I took a class at the University of Minnesota in modern poetry a couple of years ago, and our exercise was to answer the question, what is a poet? And so in honor of all of you who read tonight, I thought I'd like to read this. It's not a poem, but it's almost a poem. What is a poet? A poet is a person who has compulsion to write down thoughts, feelings, and observations in a condensed form. My sister said that when I asked her what's a poet. I would add an examiner of minutia, commentator, performer, scavenger of little bits, and more. A poet is the person who, when she says at a party, "I'm a poet," it causes a deer in the headlights look in the eyes of the listener. A poet is a person who plays well by himself, visioning, visiting, and revising 2 words for months, days, and even years. Poets don't make a living as poets. They are waiters, teachers, lawyers, janitors, truck drivers, secretaries, doctors, and technical writers. They are generally discreet about their passion to write and do not easily announce this as part of their public persona. For some of them, it is a nasty little secret. When you hear a poet read his or her own work, that is where the authentic voice resides. That is to hear the poem. Poets like to hear other poets read. Christian Bach, who is a sound poet, dazzled me with his weird and strange language, which he makes up, by the way. Hearing Billy Collins read to a full house at the Chicago Art Institute was a moment for me to celebrate. Poets often show their inclinations as children. A 6-year-old poet is the same as a 90-year-old poet. When poets get together, they like to talk about their work. Once, when doing a stint as a waitress at St. Martin's Table, I saw Michael Dennis Brown and Jim Moore, 2 local very famous poets, having lunch and was jealous that I could not join them. I begged the manager to change my station that day so I could eavesdrop. She refused to do it. She did not comprehend the seriousness of that situation. To be a clear, direct, accessible poet, or to be a poet who obfuscates and distorts language, for me, that is the question. Can the 2 sides coexist? I dedicate that to all of you tonight. Okay. So I'm going to read one poem, even though when we were talking about the theme tonight, we said it should be peace. I said it's going to be hard to stay away from war, and indeed, it is hard to stay away from war. It's everywhere for all of us. So this poem is called "It Takes Courage to Live." He lost 3 limbs, part of his face, and sustained multiple serious internal injuries, the surgeon says, of a young soldier he saved. Says it for the newscast in that clinical way his training has taught him, how to report these things, to make clear decisions, save a life or not, do his duty. He does it responsibly. The surgeon knows what it is to lose pieces of himself. Every morning, between dark and dawn, arms and legs tear his sleep apart, leaving 2 to 3 a.m. and 4 to 5 a.m. on a battlefield he can never quite locate. I'll stop here in case other people want to read.
Thank you, Diane. So I will end. This is dedicated to my dad. I wrote this on the day he died, finished it the day after. And he served in Korea when he was 19, in 1950 and 51. So he was 19 and 20 when he was over there. Today, August 31st. My father died while eating peanut buttered toast and sliced bananas. Before he finished his last bite, his head fell back, as if inspecting a cobweb on the ceiling. This is how my mother found him when she returned to the breakfast table, carrying her toothbrush smeared with mint paste. I felt for a pulse at his neck, but there was no beat, she explained for the 8th time. Neighbors flood the phone lines and stuff the refrigerator full of wild rice hot dish, tuna salad, and slaw. Instead of his arms hanging limply at his side, she told how they were spread out, palms up, his devotional still open on the table, like a skydiver prepared to take flight. So we've got 3 people who have not read it all, and then a couple more who'd like to read one more. I'll draw your name out of a hat alphabetically. Angela, why, here you are. If you would like to read.
Angela Griffin. I didn't write anything for tonight, but I did. I was gifted with this book, Poetry for Young People, William Butler Yeats, and he's always got something to read, you know, that fits in with an occasion. This one's called The Lake Isle of Innisfree. I will arise and go now, and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honeybee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray. I hear it in the deep heart's core. Lake Isle of Innisfree.
Thank you, Angela. And also reading something of your own. So come on up and, yeah.
This is called The Team. A lone wheel rolling down a steep hill keeps rolling, bounces over bumps, careens crazily across minor aberrations, out of control, but always rolling down the hill until it reaches bottom, staggers pitifully onto the plain, and collapses. 2 wheels together, connected hub to hub by a rigid axle, roll down the same hill, slower and more deliberate, bounce over the same bumps, crawl across the same aberrations, in sync and in control, but still pulled by the same power, to the bottom where they roll onto the plain, upright and intact relative to each other, a team ready for another hill.
Thanks, Bill. And Joe, you are going to read?
Okay.
Yeah. So, Joe, I can't pull up your last name, Williams?
Williams, yeah.
Yes.
I have a couple. I found this by Carl Sandburg. So this was written during World War I. And as you know, back then they didn't have television or anything else. So if you wanted to know what's going on in the world, you'd gather someplace, a central point. In this case, it's a big board of a map, and there's a young man pointing things out on the map as he talks. So here's Sandburg. I have been watching the war map slammed up for advertising in front of the newspaper office. Buttons, red and yellow buttons, blue and black buttons, are shoved back and forth across the map. A laughing young man, sunny with freckles, climbs a ladder, yells a joke to somebody in the crowd, and then fixes a yellow button 1 inch west, and follows the yellow button with a black button 1 inch west. 10,000 men and boys twist on their bodies on a red soak along a river ridge, gasping of wounds, calling for water, some rattling death in their throats. Who'd have guessed what it cost to move 2 buttons 1 inch on the war map here in front of the newspaper office, where the freckle-faced young man is laughing to us? Okay. This one, I'll preface, this is from Langston Hughes, written middle 40s probably, just during a little after the war. And it's a letter from, it's a poem of a letter of a black man writing about he's coming home. Now, I'm old enough to know Jim Crow. I was at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri, and when we arrived at the Trailways Depot, Jim Crow laws were in effect. Separate waiting rooms, separate fountains, separate everything. In uniform, on pass, if I went out with a black friend, which I didn't, because we couldn't go in any place together. If we went to eat, he went around the side and picked up his order. He couldn't come in with me. Well, and I tell my kids this kind of thing went on, they find it hard to believe, and I'm glad they find it hard to believe. So anyway, Langston Hughes, with that in mind, is writing. It's called Over There, World War II. Excuse me. Dear fellow Americans, I write this letter hoping times will be better when this war is through. I am a tan-skinned Yank driving a tank, and I ask, will V-Day be me day too? I wear a U.S. uniform. I've done the enemy much harm. I've driven back the Germans and the Japs from Burma to the Rhine. On every battle line, I've dropped defeat into the fascist lap. I'm a Negro American, out to defend my land. Army, Navy, Air Corps, I am there. I take munitions through. I fight or stevedore too. I face death same as you do, everywhere. I've seen my buddy lying where he fell. I've watched him dying. I promised him that I would try to make our land a land where his son could be a man and there'd be no Jim Crow birds left in our sky. So this is what I want to know. When we see victories glow, will you still let old Jim Crow hold me back? When all these foreign folks who've waited, Italians, Chinese, Danes, are liberated, will I still be ill-fated because I'm black? Here in my own native land, will the Jim Crow laws still stand? Will Dixie lynch me when I return? Or will you comrades in arms from the factories and the farms have learned what this war was fought for us to learn? When I take off my uniform, will I be safe from harm? Or will you do me as the Germans did the Jews? When I've helped this world to save, shall I be color's slave? Or will victory change your antiquated views? You can't say I didn't fight to smash the fascist might. You can't say I wasn't with you in each battle. As a soldier and a friend, when this war comes to an end, will you herd me in a Jim Crow car like cattle? Or will you stand up like a man at home and take your stand for democracy? That's all I ask of you. When we lay the guns away to celebrate our victory day, will V-Day be me day too? That's all I want to know. Sincerely, G.I. Joe. Thank you, too. That's powerful. Mouths make me shake sometimes.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Powerful poems. Thank you, Joe. Roslye, you have a poem to read?
Sure.
Great. Thank you.
This is a poem from a series of poems that I wrote about nature and the environment and the changes that are happening in terms of our responsibility for becoming aware for sustainability. Key to the ash tree.
Excuse me?
Key to the ash tree. Rooted deep in earth, ancient ash trees embrace the world. In spring, unfurl green fans. Autumn, spread blazing capes of yellow. Penetrate our inner being, protect place, and offer strength. Its sweet sap, suckled from earth, its spiral buds linked, form solar amulets to ward off winter blues, rejuvenate the inner spirit. The winged seeds spin in circles, take refuge in distant places, till saplings revive come spring, and butterflies and moths return to feed. Woodworkers fashion its hard wood into guitars, bright as the cutting and sustainable tones of Jimi Hendrix and the Rolling Stones. Besides, its perfect firewood, smoky and warm, cows, goats, and rabbits gobble each fallen leaf. As Greek myth would have it, wedding ash and oak generated man and woman. Tales told, the ash fairy inspired poetry, its coiled buds akin to the life cycle. But be forewarned, an approaching storm, ash branches reach toward the thunderbolt in a foreboding sky.
Wendy, why don't you come up, and then we'll have Diane and I will read a short one.
This isn't I don't know that this is about peace, but I felt inspired to bring it. It's called I Want to Know. Are you prepared to fall into the fierce heat of longing? Are you ready for the sway and swing of belonging, the scrape and sting of abandonment? To whom do you belong? Those who claim you? Or those who call out for you to return? Or those who paid your ticket so you could leave, crushing your hand while saying goodbye? Who abandoned you? And will you encounter each other again? Not at the cafe, surely, where you let the hours slide by on the taste of coffee and scones. Not at the supermarket with its wide aisles of calculated spending. Not at the concert with music as startling as fireworks. Who do you belong to but yourself? What do you need but the will to move through the wilderness of your mistakes until you recognize each step is a candle, each breath is a prayer? When you melt in the heat of your heart's desire, what will remain? Ash? Surely not. Surely only flame. Surely only love.
Diane, would you like to come up?
You know, I want to read a poem that I've never read before, and I don't know if it's even going to work. So this is like a virgin crew here. But I wrote it a while ago, and it's called I Don't Know It's Tacky Until Someone Tells Me It Is. And I wrote it, I'm a very big enthusiast of art, and in fact, I'm kind of mad about art. So I wrote this, and it's called Tyranny, and it's from a line that someone had uttered. You know how poets find lines and they build on those lines? I don't know it's tacky until someone tells me it is. And so the poem is called Tyranny. Boldly I confess a passion for less than what culture mavens classify as art. Tuned for the absurd, give me a wind-up bird that clatters loudly as neon signs flash, eat. The Elvis on velvet, don't try to shelve it. I like what I like, and that's that. You arbiters of taste want my view erased? Stash your standards elsewhere, and that's that. Did you get it? Yeah. Oh, all right. Okay. The next poem is called The Matter of Owie Songs. The toddler, age 2, is tired of rooster songs and ditties about pigs that oink and cows that moo. The toddler, age 2, asks for an owie song. He sports his share of scrapes and dings that mar sheer skin unblemished before this time of unanticipated tumbles, followed by hot tears and the consolation of cartoon band-aids. In his evolving tale of trial and error, this is chapter 1. His own song, so like the sad tunes of lament, chagrin, regret, the adult cuts and bruises to come. Let me tell you my sorrow, let me tell you. Wee owie early, Humpty Dumpty and all fall down. The cry we make trumps a moo or an oink any day. Do you have time for one more? No? No?
Go ahead.
This one's called, I've never read this one either, Wordsmith in Space, and my professor told me it wasn't, it needed more work, so I'm not sure it does, but here we go. Wordsmith in Space. Alacrity, arcane, anodyne, audible, calumny, candid, integument, effluvia. I pull words back from the vortex so they are not lost. Unuttered, they disappear into OMG or encrusted memory sediment. I cannot remember how to say fluffy in French or mortar in Spanish. Like the plumber losing his favored wrench. What do you talk about to a plumber at parties? Maybe effluvia. At the costume party, Lady Gaga, the Tin Man, a male Brunilda with spouting rubber breasts, the fairy godmother, Sir Elton in platform shoes, and a royal Marie Antoinette check their droids under the cackle of strobe lights. The Milwaukee beer can twirls while the crusader bows to the queen, waltzing her around the room to the throb of heavy metal. If there is a plumber here, conversation is of no consequence.
So we'll end on, it's a rather heavy poem. I live not far on Library Lane, and through my back alley is my neighbor, Dora Zeidenweber. And I'm sure some of you know her. She had been in Auschwitz with her whole family. And I go and visit her, and I get to hear so many stories that she tells of that time. And I was really caught up with one that I wanted to share. I'm not done with it, but I really want to share the poem. And if you have an idea for me, you can let me know. It's called Dr. Mengele. This is what he did to my neighbor. This man who died on a Brazilian beach, who decided women's fates with the tip of his finger pointing west or east. Untried, for God's sake, untried, for his crimes of flicking his finger left and right. As naked mothers, unclothed daughters paraded past his view, hearts tight as their lips. Too old, too young, gas him. And thank you all for coming. Have some more to eat and drink.